late 90s when Jettas first were becoming a thing. I guess mid 90s, he had to have one of the new Jettas. So you get the sports seats and everything, and he put a bra on it, and I'm like, it's still a Jetta. No matter what you do, it's still a Jetta. Yeah, I mean, it was a nice car, but it's not a Porsche, dude.
No, so it's funny though. The Jettas are kind of like a semi-popular tuner car. Like people always think of Honda Civics and stuff like that, Acuras and stuff as being the stuff, but it always cracks me up that if you watch the first Fast and Furious movie, which is to me the only one you need to watch, that's the only
need.
Well,
you don't need to watch. I've seen all of them. You don't need to watch any of them.
It's the one. It's that whole franchise has purposefully jumped the shark, but I actually like the first one. It's a fun little race car movie, but one of the dudes
it literally launched a car to the moon.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about what it literally did,
oh my, it's just fucking weird. But like the one guy's tuner car was a Jetta, the one who lost his car in the race to the dude with the S2000. I love those tuner cars, man. They're fun to look at. I hate the sound of them though. There's no way. I don't care what you do. That little pissed off bumblebee sound is you can't beat that. I need to go back and watch that movie. That was actually I have fun.
Or you could just watch
Point Break.
Point Break, and it's the same movie.
Yeah,
but better. Much better.
Yeah. Point Break is better, or the
hell yeah.
Point Break is better. Yeah,
hell yeah.
I will have to take your word for it. I don't remember seeing Point Break. I need to.
What?
Yeah.
What do they teach you in this school you go to?
Right? He's a college-educated lawyer, and he has never seen Point Break.
Wait, was Point Break the Keanu Reeves surfer film?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I have seen that then. Okay, I just had to make sure. But was that?
I mean, it literally has the Chili Peppers in it. How can you not have seen it?
Just about to type an angry letter to Southern Fried
To be fair, Flipper also had the Chili Peppers in it, so it's not exactly a. I mean,
so did Wise Guys.
That's true.
Flea was in Suburbia.
Yep. They were also in. Were they in? Was it Salt and Sea that one of them was in? I can't remember. That was a funny movie. That was a really funny.
Flea
movie.
Pretty much played himself in Suburbia.
That's because that's all Flea can play. It's I respect the man's bass talents, but he's not exactly a trained thespian.
But so, really, who is?
Willem Dafoe. That's that answer. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another fun-filled, spectacular episode of the Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. This is episode 229, and as usual, I am Caleb Alexander, but for the first time ever, I'm Caleb Alexander JD.
Oh! I'm just regular Matt Trogdon.
I'm Craig Letts.
Yeah.
With no initials after my name, or
just this sound of a deflated balloon
or anything.
Well, I'm not an Esquire yet. I don't get to be an ESQ until I pass the bar, but...
So I have a question about that.
Okay.
An Esquire is an official, royal title.
Mm-hmm.
How come we're allowed to use that? Because we're not allowed to use royal titles in America.
Because it is so
allowed.
It's the same...
What do you mean allowed?
Well, it's in the Constitution.
Because it's not royalty. So it's not royalty. So and it's not exactly in the Constitution. But I know exactly what you're saying. You can't bestow. And what it's saying is you can't have royalty here. We don't allow bloodlines. But an Esquire is not a bloodline. It is a royal. The king would appoint.
Keep your laws off my freedom. That's what you can do.
Do what?
You can keep your laws off my freedom. What you can do.
You hear that bald eagle screaming in the background? No, but so essentially,
eagly.
because our system of justice is it comes from England. So our system of justice, they essentially adopted the English system here, and there's a few tweaks and changes, but it is still Esquire is still an appointment. You are allowed to represent people in front of the court, in front of the king.
Yes. When do you get the powdered wig?
I don't. We don't do
what?
That. Although
I know
the whole reason I backed this whole thing.
Fun fact: there were dudes last night at graduation
with powdered wigs.
Powdered wigs in the middle of our graduation.
Bravo!
Yeah, I was
bravo,
proud of them.
I say.
I was proud of them. It was funny. But yeah, no. So I am graduated. I am officially.
I love that your friend showed up and you're like, yeah, he's a little embarrassed or whatever you said, and he's literally wearing his cap from graduation around town, just walking around with it on.
Oh, Cash?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, had a little cookout yesterday, invited everybody over, and my brother-in-law literally. I mean that. Brother, he has went through law school with me. He wore his little graduation little fuzzy cap around. So, but no, man, it feels good. I'm glad to be done with this chapter in my life, and I cannot wait to move on. It's fun stuff. We got Matt to eat cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. How bad did you crash last night?
I didn't make it to the night. I fell asleep about 20 minutes after I got home.
That is hilarious.
This is the most sugar Matt has had in years. Like his eyebrows are still.
I tried to get you to not eat the fondant, but you just went all in.
Once
you started going, you just went all in.
It was great. You got to commit. You got to commit.
Yeah.
I have to say, it was a pretty cool cake.
Yeah.
It was.
It was amazing.
Yeah. It looked like 2 law school books with a graduation cap on it.
Yeah.
It was rather remarkable. I guess it was Blue Cake here in Little Rock.
Yeah, Blue Cake Company here in
Who
Little Rock.
Stephanie and I use all the time for our cakes as well. But when we, not that we have a lot of need for cakes in our life, but when we do, we use them.
They're good, man. It was a statue. Like, it was a work of art. Like, it literally...
It was very impressive.
Like those videos you see online, is it cake or is it something else? Where they like cut into random things, and sometimes it's cake, and not. That's what it looked like.
And now that's a
Matt
Netflix
about
show.
this yesterday.
Yeah.
Matt's never heard of this. When they have baby showers and they do the cake shaped like babies, and then they cut the baby.
That's twisted, man.
Slice into a child.
It's like something out of a King Diamond concert. Look it up, kids.
I mean, it makes a rather
metal, isn't it?
I was going to say, it makes a rather mundane situation kind of metal.
I mean, it would.
But in the setting of like a mother-in-law cutting it, it just twisted into a whole new level. I mean, that's H.P. Lovecraft type stuff.
We all wanted to know what it was like to be Moses or Abraham for a little bit. Throw the kid on the rock, take the knife, make the Bible happen.
Thought in my life.
Me either. No, I would say you're alone on that one.
Yeah. Quit saying y'all.
Yeah.
We all.
I go to the dark place sometimes.
Yeah, I guess.
But when I do go to the dark place, there's something that
Here
always
comes
brings me
awkward
back. It wasn't going to be awkward. You made it awkward. It was going to be
Whenever
great.
I go to the dark place, I read comic books.
And that brings it back. And that's what we are here to talk about on this podcast today, as it always is.
In law school.
It was going to be so good.
Skip
really
that.
Was.
That is in the same chapter as Point Break.
Never going to live that one down. But no, we are here to talk about comic books as usual. This was a fun week, but the highlight of my week is always Sunday mornings when I get to sit down with you two fine gentlemen and talk about some of these funny books. But, it's one of those things. It's kind of, like a segue. I'll take Craig's segue to segue.
I'm totally messing
like
with you, dude.
but like a segue, it helps if you get, you set the table, you set the mood for comics. And we like to do that on our show by dropping a little short stack on it. Three books that we have read throughout the week that really puts us in the mood to talk about comics. So I will turn this over to you, gentlemen. Tell me about 3 books you read this week, like, dislike, or otherwise, to kind of get us in the vibe to talk about these comics that we know and love.
So I'll kick it off. So my short stack's made up of, first of all, X-Men number 11 by Jerry Duggan, Pepe Larraz, and Marte Garcia. This, continues to deliver. It's really, really good. Pepe Larraz is one of the best artists going right now.
Oh my God.
Just pushing this whole story just way beyond the writing itself. It is so good. And the writing is excellent. And the art's just blown it out of the water. Number 2 on my short stack is the Sumerian from Ablaze. This is number 3, Hour of the Dragon. For those of the uninitiated, this is the uncensored, as they call it, tales of Conan the Barbarian, as Robert E. Howard originally wrote them. This one is written by Julian Blondell, artist is Valentine Shearer. This has got a different feel to it from a normal Conan story. I don't know if you guys are.
I haven't read it yet. No.
This has just got a different kind of feel to it. It's great.
Okay.
It's great. But it's just, I don't know, the narrative is just, it just feels very different. Have you read this yet?
So it's on my, so I have not gotten to this week's comic books. It's been a busy week, but it will probably get read today or tomorrow. The last Sumerian book, there was another Sumerian book that kind of had a different feel, but it was a different visual feel. There was a book where they gave us more of a lean.
Well, yeah. This is, I'm talking about the narrative.
Right.
The narrative in this.
So is it pulled? These are all pulled directly from Howard stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Is it just the adaptation of it, you think?
Yeah.
Or is it just...
Well, so this is and I said this when we talked about issue number 1 of this. I've not read this original Howard story. This may be the only one I haven't read.
Gotcha.
This one just, I don't know how I missed this one. So
and it was the quote unquote full length, one that supposedly that he did that was not a short. It was supposed to be more of a, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the pitch on Hour of the Dragon? This was one he did that was longer than
it
all the rest
looks to be like a much, well, first of all, it is longer than your typical Conan story.
Right.
Is it the longest one he did? I don't know. I'm going to look it up because now I'm very curious about this particular story, especially now that I've gotten into it. I really wish y'all had read this because there's a big section, there's a big part of this story I wanted to hear, what y'all had to say about it, but you fucking ruined it. Because of
you can tell us what you thought
because
about
of
it.
laziness.
Tell us about it. And talk
No,
about
I'm
it.
not going to spoil it. I want y'all to go in cold because there's an element to this story that's very reminiscent of something else in Sword and Sorcery.
I always go in cold,
and I want to hear what y'all think about it. Just anywho, number 3 on my short stack.
Love when we get an anywho from Matt.
Yeah. The from Fantagraphics, Red Room Trigger Warnings number 3 by Ed Piskor. What was stand out about this particular issue is the setting for this one is the Pitcairn Islands. That is something I was unfamiliar with, so I did some Google research. The Pitcairn Islands is a notorious island originally settled by England. It is possibly the most small and remote island inhabited by people. It's got a very sordid past. I mean, it can only support apparently about 30 human beings. And at one point, there's stories of basically there being about 30 or 60 people, about 15 of them women, and 2 men just basically killed everybody so they could have 15 women to themselves. And generation after generation, inbreeding went on. Yeah, very sordid history to this little island, as it turns out. And in this setting, it's the home of a Red Room Bitcoin mogul, I guess you would call him.
Yeah.
He's self-appointed mogul. And shenanigans ensued.
Every time you talk about Red Room and you utter the phrase "I was unfamiliar with," I breathe a little sigh of relief.
Yes,
personally,
yes.
Just as your friend,
Yeah.
I'm personally glad there are certain things about this book that you are unfamiliar with.
Yeah. Ed Piskor does a lot of research.
He's meticulous
doing this book.
Yeah, he's meticulous.
And he talks about on his channel the stuff that he reads and watches. Ugh, man, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, I'm sure he's on some sort of FBI watch list.
I mean,
yeah.
he does need to be careful.
Yeah.
He's got to be, somebody's got to be watching him.
His lawyers.
Man.
Craig, before you launch into your short stack, because we talked about a Conan book, I think we kind of have to mention, and I don't know if you've seen this news yet, apparently, and this is, Bleeding Cool has ran an article, and take Bleeding Cool stock for what it is. I personally take it with a grain of salt, but this seems to have some traction to it. It seems that Marvel has lost the Conan license again, or something's happened to it. The license is moving away from Conan. Now, I have not actually taken time to read into it, and unfortunately, and I'll say unfortunately for this particular circumstance, I'm not on Twitter anymore, and so my connection with Fred Malmberg, who is a very big wig in the Conan licensing world, very much was the president of a lot like the company that has the Conan license for a long time, and is in charge of all their gaming and stuff. So I haven't been able to talk to Fred about it. I've actually legitimately thought of getting back on Twitter just so I can reach out to Fred and get his opinion on it. I need to find a better way to do that.
Your reasons for being off Twitter notwithstanding,
right?
It's probably not going to go through anyways. But I did read the article.
Yeah.
Matt and I talked about it a little bit yesterday. There's some copyright stuff going on because of the fact that in Europe it's public domain.
Mm-hmm.
Which is how Ablaze is able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that own the rights in America, I don't think are super happy with what's been happening at the Marvel universe with it. So
Really?
Yeah. is kind of what it came down to. And I don't know if they've got a bet. I think they're wanting to. My understanding is they want to open a comic book publisher specifically to do Conan stuff. And they want to be 100% in charge of it. And I think that their unhappiness had to do with the way they treated Conan in Savage Avengers.
Really?
Yeah.
So I can see that
I mean, it's bleeding cool, so
Yeah.
you don't know what part of it's rumor, what part of it's real.
From a purist standpoint, I can see that with Savage Avengers, bringing them into the modern time, having them walk around with the Punisher and stuff. There were a lot of people who didn't care for that.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, Matt included. I actually thought it was a fun treatment. At some level, to borrow my buddy Vince Bonavilla's, slogan, comics should be ridiculous, and that was a ridiculous comic, but it was fun. So, but I mean, if you're a Conan purist, I can see how you would.
Well, and
like
especially
that.
if you own the rights to Conan
Yeah.
and you're wanting, I mean, it sounds to me like possibly looking for an excuse to do this anyways.
Mhm.
So that, I think they're just going to let the rights expire, which is pretty close to being done anyways. According to the article, whoever was doing the covers for the last book posted it and said, "This is my last Conan cover because Marvel no longer has the rights," and that's how it got out there.
Okay.
Now, I don't know
Yeah.
that to be factual or not. I didn't do a deep dive into it. And again, take Bleeding Cool for what it's worth. Generally, their stories, maybe not all the facts in it are accurate, but the stories themselves usually have some basis to truth in them.
And that's true.
But it sounds like the people that own the rights to it are going to, maybe they like what's been happening with the Cimmerian stories,
Yeah.
the Cimmerians.
Man,
Cimmerian.
I'm glad you corrected yourself there.
Yeah. The stuff that's being done by the other publisher,
Ablaze.
maybe they like the way that's going a little bit better, and so they're wanting to take control of it. I'm not 1,000% sure, but again, there's that copyright thing with European copyrights being what it is versus American copyrights, which there's like a 25-year difference.
Yeah.
And now it's almost 50 because they increased it, I think, for Mickey Mouse. I think that's a big part of it because now it's 96 years after death.
Yep.
Where it used to be 75
when it's
or 78.
when it's corporate owned.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference there, and not without getting to the legal weeds, there is a difference between when it's corporate and personal. But
Yeah.
I need to sit down and read that article today. I just wanted to bring that to get your guys' opinion on it.
My opinion is whoever's publishing it, it doesn't have to be Marvel to me as long as it's good Conan stuff. I'm good with it.
At the end of the day, I mean, and we got good Conan stuff at Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
We got
Yeah.
really good stuff, and we're still
We did, but
getting-
then we got selling card decks and things like that.
Yeah.
We got what?
Well, when the Jim Zub did that little short run on
Oh,
it
the
where he
game
had-
thing. Oh.
Yeah, the game.
Which look,
I get it.
Yeah,
I'm
take a
not
chance.
complaining. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm just saying that it was good and bad at Marvel.
not here for a long time, but here for a good time. So either
But
way,
I
I'm
do
curious to see what
understand
happens.
from the article is that Marvel is keeping the publishing rights to all of their old stuff, so that won't go away. They can continue to release omnibuses and everything of the stuff that has been published through Marvel.
Cool.
So at least that will continue to be a thing.
Cool.
So
It doesn't really matter where it's at, though. We're going to get good Conan from somewhere. I mean, be it Blaze, Marvel, Dark Horse, the fucking Kurt Busiek Conan, just it's good stuff. So I will poorly segue back over to you, and it's only a segue because I use the word segue. Craig, drop your short stack on us. Tell us what you read this week.
I'm not going to go too deep into mine because these are all books from this week and you didn't read, and I was kind of surprised that this wasn't in your pile of what you were going to talk about with it. This is Grimm, number 1 by Boom Studios. Stephanie Phillips, of course, wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Flaviano illustrated it wonderfully, I have to say. And Rico Renzi did the colors. Tom Napolitano did the lettering. So this is basically, it is exactly what it sounds like. Dude dies at the beginning of it. One of the Grim Reapers shows up to take him to his afterlife. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't believe he's dead. She finally convinces him he's dead. And the way they get across as she says, whatever your beliefs are is what it is, but the river sticks, is they have to have their scythes to keep the dead from climbing aboard the boats. Well, dude steals her scythe and comes back across, so she's now hunting dude.
It's just a souvenir.
Yeah. Probably not going to be in a whole lot of trouble once they find out she's lost her scythe.
Yeah,
no. Next is Hulk versus Thor, Banner of War, Part 1. Did you read this?
Mm-hmm.
Donnie Cates, Martis Kachila, Matt Wilson, and Joe Sabino were the creators on this. This book was a lot of freaking fun. From the Watcher at the beginning eating popcorn as he's telling you the background of it. You have both Thor and Hulk dealing with their alternate personalities. In Thor's case, it's Odin talking to him through Mjolnir because Odin's now entrapped in Mjolnir. If you're not reading Thor, and Hulk is controlling the brain functions. Banner's controlling the brain functions of Hulk, and Hulk is controlling the engine functions of Hulk inside of the giant Hulk vessel that is. And so they're having their own mental games going on while they're fighting each other. And the ending to me was just great. I would have words with thee is always a great way to end a book.
Oh, did they use that line?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
It's always... I'm not going to spoil any more than that, but
that makes my heart happy.
Yeah. So...
especially this week of all weeks. Like, and you guys know, but the importance of that phrase in general, but... Like, that is my favorite page from George Perez's Avengers, is where Thor, it's in the Age of Ultron storyline that they loosely based the really bastardized Ultron film off of. But Thor has been MIA for a little bit, and he comes busting through a wall and says, "Ultron, I will have words with thee." That is one of my favorite George Perez drawn moments of all time, and this week especially.
Well,
that's
I'm not going to spoil any more of it. You need to read that book because I'm
happen.
sure it's at the top of your list. And then, surprise, surprise, I've got a Star Wars book on my list.
Really?
Right. Crimson Reign #4 by Charles Soule, Steve Cummings, Victor Olazaba, and Guru Effects, and Travis Lanham. So, this gives us more depth into the Knights of Ren, which is why I brought this out. They've been staying under the radar. This is all taking place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And Kira, Han Solo's girlfriend from the movie Solo, is now in charge of Crimson Dawn. Maul is no longer part of it. He's been executed by Obi-Wan. Again. And she's now running all the chess game that she's playing with the Rebellion and the Empire back and forth, and all of the different... She knows that Crimson Dawn's not big enough to take on the other crime syndicates on her own, but they can control pieces and make it really difficult for the other crime syndicates.
Yeah.
So her thing is she needs a key, and that key is in Darth Vader's castle.
Mustafar.
Whoops. So she sends the Knights of Ren there, promising them that she can protect them. And
like a liar.
They get there, and unfortunately for them, Darth Vader's home.
Wipe your feet off before you walk into that man's house.
Yeah, so the Knights of Ren, who had been quietly under the radar, are no longer under Vader's radar. And at one point, he says to him, "Oh, you guys are the Knights of Ren? How pathetic you have become." So... show up at this man's house and talk some shit. I mean, as Darth Vader tends to do. But they are on the run. They got the key, and they're on the run, and they will definitely be trying to outlast Vader's reach.
I really like that we're getting their story, and I've been waiting on it for a long time. Like, you only see a blip of them, but those dudes just look cool, and you just want to see, that fleshed out.
Well, we're getting it in bits and pieces in the comic books, and it has been this way. It's funny, at the beginning, he meets Kira, the guy that's the main Ren. He's not Kylo, of course, but he's the one that Kylo probably is the second down the line,
right,
eventually taking this guy's place. But he meets Kira, and he says, something about a pretty face, and he takes off his helmet, and she goes, oh my. She's like, no, I'm not here for your pretty face. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, all of those Star Wars books that are going on right now, the Crimson Dawn stuff has been really, really good. Very, very cool.
I'm loving what little of the Star Wars portion I'm reading is very cool. So I'll be quick on mine, a little short stack. Did not, again, dude, I'm so, glad that I have, glad the last few weeks are over. It's been hectic and dumb, and I'm hopefully going to be able to actually sit down and have some, free time now. And so I'm really excited about it as I throw my phone on the floor. The first book I want to talk to you, and I don't even know if you guys are reading this, but I hope you are, because it is so, so good. Catwoman Lonely City. This book is just being done by Cliff Chang. That's the only name you need to know. He does the writing and the art on it. It's a Black Label book. It's outside of continuity. It is a Catwoman when she's older story, and she's going back. Batman's been killed. Cliff Chang, if you've ever seen his art is spectacular. It is stunning. It is exactly that kind of art where every line matters, and he is very he's not free with his lines. He has got it dialed down to exactly what you need it to be, and it just looks great. But I'd never read a book that was written by Cliff Chang up until this point. And I was talking to some friends about it. Our buddy Brian this morning. It's too early to tell, but I really do think that in the light of history, when you look back on this book, this is going to be a book that was quintessential and pivotal for Cliff Chang's career in flipping him from being just a comics great to something akin to a comics legend. This book is just, from the story to the art, is spectacular. I can't preach enough about it, and it's in that beautiful big magazine format. If you've ever it's so good. It is a fun adventure, and it's just stunning to look at. Next on my short stack, jumping over to The House of Ideas, is a book that I know Matt really liked. And it's a book that just further drives home that Benjamin Percy is just amazing. That dude is at the top of his game, just can do everything, and is stylistically adept. He can write serious, he can write gritty, he can write violent, but he can also write incredibly funny. That book is none other than Wolverine number 20. That is, this book features a character that is either your favorite or you hate him. Very, very few people are in between. But it's Deadpool. He shows up in this and is written incredibly well by Mr. Percy. It's just fun. The book is drawn by Adam Kubert. Frank Martin and Diho Lima do the colors, and Corey Pettit does the letters. If you want to just laugh out loud, literally laugh out loud, incredibly funny moments. The juxtaposition between Wolverine and Deadpool in this,
it was pretty great.
Yep.
Murder ensues, heads fly, and then really it's just about Deadpool taking umbrage at the fact he's not respected as a mutant, and it cracks me up. But it's fun and it's beautiful to look at. Really, really like Kubert's art in this. And then my third book over at Image, I'm just checking off the big three this week. It looks like is the latest chapter of Philadelphia. This is issue number 21. If you've been reading this book, I've been talking about it from the get-go. It is both a vampire story and a historical treatise, on some point.
Historical fiction, maybe?
Yeah, historical fiction. But it really does.
Except where they're all vampires?
Well, see, that's the nonfiction part. I choose to believe that's real. But the cool thing about this is Rodney Barnes is taking historical reality and looping it into a vampire story. That's where I say it's kind of a historical treatise mixed in with a very fictional horror story. But the cool thing is famously it takes some of our beloved founding fathers, ex-presidents.
Speak for yourself.
Loosely beloved. John Adams being the key figure in the first half of the book, and his wife Abigail. But now the big hoo-ha himself, the first president, Mr. George Washington, has stepped up to the plate, who is also
I thought he had wooden teeth.
Nope.
That is urban legend.
He might, but
actually they were made of slaves' teeth, I believe.
I think that's the story.
New,
But in this book, he, where we're at right now, George Washington has stepped up to the plate. He is a figure in this and has come back.
Maybe when you turn into a vampire, your teeth grow back.
You would think so. We also get werewolves now. Like, werewolves are playing a big part and parcel in this story. And they introduce a character who's got some both historical relevance and who is going to play a really cool role in this. And that's Toussaint Rouvier, who is if you're from New Orleans, that name should mean something to you. But there's a panel in this book where this young woman, she's teamed up with some werewolves, but she's told them to hang back for a minute, and something happens, and they think she's about to get hurt, but she's playing it, and she just turns around to this massive group of werewolves and puts her finger up in there, and she says no, and they stop, and they're just like, okay. It's a great
That's
book.
what I would try.
Jason Sean Alexander just continues to crush it.
Sounds ill recommended.
Yeah.
No, but hey, she knows, like, she knows.
It sounds
the pack.
like the lay down and act dead if you're getting attacked by a bear.
No, those are her buddies though. So she knows exactly what she's doing, and it was just really great panel, man. Love this book. Cannot get enough of it. It's so good, and the spinoffs have been fun too. So
I didn't read any of the spinoffs, and I fell off of that when my mom was sick. But it was it's fantastically drawn, and the story was really rather fascinating to me.
It continues to be. Hopefully, like I said, I recommend.
I'll probably jump back on and read the trades when it's done, or a collected edition of it when it's done.
It's so fun, and it didn't, like with a lot of these books, I want them to be smart and fun, and this book has both. This book is both an intellectual, intelligent. The plot's wonderful. The art is gorgeous. It's ethereal, I think you could say, and it's vampires and werewolves. So fun stuff. As you might have gathered, when we were talking about our love of Conan, or when we were talking about the Conan licensing issue, the three individuals at this table love Conan. We both enjoy the history of it. We enjoy the lore of it. We respect what it did for fantasy, what it did for fantasy fiction, and its importance to that genre. You can't talk about Conan, especially not some of the places that the Conan showed up at, without talking about some of the cover art from some of those famous books that you saw. A lot of those done by Mr. Frank Frazetta. The majority of those that are the most notable, I think, done by Frank Frazetta. Gorgeous paintings, stunning works. When you talk about science fiction or just science fantasy in general, you have to talk about Frazetta and his art. He is a cornerstone. I mean, do you think that would be too strong of a word to use? I don't think so. I think cornerstone to that whole medium.
Yeah, I mean, his covers on those books were the reason those books sold so well. I mean, that's openly talked about. Yeah. They are key to the book selling, is him doing the covers.
Yeah, I don't think you can understate his importance.
Yeah,
you can't. And one of his
I don't think you can understate his importance to fantasy art, period.
Right.
Yeah.
And the influence he had on fantasy artists forever going into the future.
Yeah, we always, like in Nerd Circle, we always talk about, the quote-unquote Mount Rushmores of this or Mount Rushmores of that, and I don't have a Mount Rushmore of, like, laid out in my brain of science fiction or science fantasy article or just fantasy artists, but he's certainly on that.
Oh, God, yeah.
And one of his most famous paintings, one of the quintessential images that you have to connect with Frank Frazetta is probably the Death Dealer. I think, there were, 7 or 8 paintings in that series. The most
I think
famous
there were 7 or 8 completed ones, not to mention how many that he had.
Yeah, I think Death Dealer number 6 though is what most people associate with it, with the image of him on the horse with his scythe/axe, just there being amazing. The helmet, and that in turn in the world of comics has spurned a lot of comics related to that. Like there's a lot of mythos that have been tied into those stories. And this week...
I mean, pretty much every Berserker story told, every Barbarian story told.
They tie a lot into it.
Some sort of basis. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out my butt.
No, I don't think so. I think
it feels that way to me.
Well, it's a quintessential image to that mythos. Like, whether you're talking about Conan books or whether you're talking about Berserker. I mean, I think that you could watch a show like The Northman, which I haven't seen yet, but there's roots in Death Dealer. Like there's visual cues to that, visual tie-ins, at least in the steals that I've seen.
I mean, it's historical in the way he pulled barbarianism and made it an image that's burned into our minds, I guess would be the way to put it.
I think so.
Matt's like, I don't know. Whatever you want, however you want to go with it. Craig.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to go.
Whatever it means to you, I guess, is what it means.
Art, that's what art is. So.
Yeah. But so, like I said, this has given us some great comics. This has given us some comics. Let me before I put the descriptors on there. This has given us some comics in this realm. And recently, this week or last week, we got another kind of chapter in that, and we were given Frank Frazetta's, I can say words, Death Dealer, #1. This is published by Opus Comics. This was written by Mitch Iverson, art by Stefano Martino, colors by Luis Antonio Delgado, with letters by Jason Basile. And before we dive in, #1, I should say, as with all things, and really I should always do this before the short stacks, but I don't think we give enough away to really warrant it. But there will be spoilers, because there's no way we can talk about what happened in this without talking about the plot. Like we're going to give this our full attention, so we're going to lay some stuff out for both our enjoyment and yours, we hope. So just gird your loins and prepare for a little spoilage, because it's going to happen, a little spoilation. And secondly, before we do that, before we really heavily dive into it, I want to know how this story treated you, because it's always up in the air with a story like this, right? Like, there's been bad Death Dealer books, and as much as we are loath to admit it, that's just kind of a fact. There's some that are much better than the others. So how did this particular issue or this particular jump-off point treat you guys?
I liked this one.
Yeah.
It's a barbarian story.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things there's some choices made in it that I wasn't crazy about. But overall, I'm in. I want to see where this goes.
Yeah.
The Death Dealer is a character. I love the Death Dealer character. I've been I was mesmerized by this painting when I was a very young teenager. The first time I saw this image, I still remember where it was. It was at the Spencer's store at the mall. Look it up, kids.
It still exists, doesn't it?
It does still exist.
Yeah, I think so.
So they had, that's where you go to get shot now. They had these all over print shirts of the Death Dealer that were like stunning, well without of my price range. Yeah. And as a I think I might have been like 13 or something at the mall with my mom. And it was so funny. My mom's like, hey, did you see this shirt over here? She even knew that it was going to appeal with me. And then, no, obviously did not buy it for me. But she wanted to make sure that I saw it.
Because here's that thing you can't have.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
So yeah, ever since that, I was like, what is this thing and how do I get more of it? This was, of course, pre-internet time, so you can't just punch in the old Google and read up on what it is and see all the images you can stand of it. So, I just, I kept an eye out for anything Frank Frazetta from that moment on. Would buy, occasionally his art book collections as they would hit the local comic book store. Yeah. Once I could afford them. But so the Death Dealer character I've always loved. And I've frankly not read any bad Death Dealer comics. Some of them were just okay. Yeah. Some of them, are better than others, but I didn't think any of them just sucked. Yeah. It's a barbarian.
As long as you don't play in high fantasy with it, you're okay.
The elves of Wondergore. The what?
The elves of Wondergore.
Yeah. I don't. Here's the thing about this original Death Dealer painting is you can do a lot with that. This can easily be a low fantasy story. This could be a high fantasy story. Yeah. There's anything you could do with this character because there's just it's open to so much interpretation.
That's fair.
You know what? For me, just exactly what you're talking about, but it's so simple. What makes that, in my opinion, what makes that thing that you just said possible? It is literally 2 red dots. Yeah, 2 red dots take this image from being just a warrior, a berserker on a Clydesdale, to being the possibility or potential or necessity of understanding a supernatural influence. And it's 2 red dots. That is the genius of Frank Frazetta.
Oh, there's a lot to the genius of Frank Frazetta. There's no doubt about it. But to your point, the mystery of the character's face is just everything is in shadow on all his paintings. There are no facial features. Exactly. So that's always been interesting to me what that interpretation is going to look like when it comes to these adaptations. What they're going to do with the face, the mask, and if you're going to see it in whole. But yeah, I have a couple of Frank Frazetta reprints that are poster size that I've always had up in my office. Death Dealer being one of them, or as my nephews call him, Axe Satan.
Axe. High five your nephews. What about you, Craig? I want to hear if you can remember like your first experience with Death Dealer.
Yeah, I was going to get there. So, like Matt, my first experience with Death Dealer, and when I found this wonderful art, also came from the mall. Mm-hmm. Not Spencer's, though. Came from a record store.
I know.
The cover of Molly Hatchet.
Yep.
And I am not a Molly Hatchet fan, but it damn near got me to buy the album.
Oh, there's no telling how many of these. And it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
That they used Frank Frazetta art on their covers.
Because nothing about their music is metal enough to have Frazetta art.
It's so weird.
But that was my first time I saw his art, and it was like, this is just, in Death Dealer specifically, this cover, the Death Dealer that you think of is the cover to Flirtin' with Disaster, which is probably their best known song as well. But it's that was my first experience. So yeah, also look up record stores.
Hey, no. Younger people will know exactly what that. Like hipsters have saved the record industry. They really have. Because they are booming now.
Yeah, I don't want to offend anybody.
Vinyls
quality of vinyl versus
vinyls are in fucking Target now. I mean,
oh, are they really?
Yeah, they're back. It's usually they'll tell you it's better quality. I'm like, well, what about the hiss? And then they go, well, you have to spend $18,000 on.
You do not. That's incorrect.
I'm one of those snobs, but I also enjoy
Like I said, I don't want to offend anybody, but so yeah, my love for all things fantasy as a child, Dungeons and Dragons, all of these things, Frazetta was such a natural fit into my young, impressionable mind at the time. But yeah, this book, I loved every part of it. It was just good. It was a solid story. As Matt said, I really want to see where it goes. Is it going to become The Mandalorian? It might. There's a possibility.
So for me, I've spoken about him on the show before, but there is a man who's very influential to my life, my Uncle Ronnie. This is, for those of you who know me personally, this would be I'm calling my brother, but my cousin Ian's dad. Who was somebody I went to after school, sit around and talk with. He was a voracious reader. He loved fantasy, loved Conan. Would literally instill in us, would make us quote what is best in life at a young age. His sons both have Crom across their knuckles. That's
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not. 100%.
And Crom cares not.
Aiden cares not.
Exactly. If it hadn't have been for some very strong opinions by my husband, I would probably also have that. But he put his foot down. But he had a picture of the Death Dealer, a recreation, a painting, but it was a recreation hanging on his wall in the hallway between the living room and the kitchen. Prominently displayed in his house. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like it. That was my first introduction to Frazetta. It was my first introduction to Death Dealer. And it all came from him. And I used to go to this man's house after school and sit down and I'd sneak him a candy bar because he wasn't supposed to have them. And we would talk about Conan books, or we would just turn Conan on. And that image was just right there hanging over my shoulders. He gave me my first taste of alcohol in that house under the shadow of Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. So very important moment, very important person in my life, and really an introduction to my love of Conan and my love of that kind of fantasy genre, at least in the way that stories like the ones that are connected to Frazetta in the way that they're represented. So this particular issue, man, I'm not going to lie. I went in with low expectations. I went in with credibly, I don't know this publisher. I don't know that I've ever read anything from this publisher. I think
that's part of it. No one knew anything about this book really until it was announced.
Not familiar with any of these creators. I know nothing about this. And all of a sudden it got announced and it came out. And, we've we know we've been set up before. Like we've had companies play off of our love of these things before, and they haven't delivered. And so I went in with incredibly low expectations. And this book, in my opinion, delivered. It was fun. I sit here and read it this morning while I was sitting here talking to Matt before the show, and had several moments where I just laughed. I thought it was fun. It is violent. It is mechanical. It's methodical in what it does because it comes from it doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's genuinely fun. And it's somebody, at least it seems to me, that Mr. Iverson has read and has an appreciation for the history and the structure of these stories. And he delivered. And he delivered in a way that was both respectful of the history of it, but also gave us something that it doesn't feel dated. It doesn't feel stale. It feels just as timely today as it would have 40 years ago. It feels present. And maybe that's the key to these stories, that they are ever present in the way that they can be delivered. And if you do it the right way. So I really appreciate what we got here. And let's dig into it. Let's talk about the plot and some of the characters. So, as Matt said earlier, and as Craig also said, this book is not complicated. It's not a super in-depth story. There's not a lot of nuance in here that you really need to worry about.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a benefit. You guys know me. I love stories with nuance, but this doesn't need it. This is not that kind of story. This story, it opens up with these two individuals. They may be a couple, who knows, but they're sitting by their little campfire. They've caught some fish that's hanging out, and they're trying to get a fire, and they're having a little bit of a debate.
They're definitely a couple the way they bicker.
They seem like they're an old married couple, but they're bickering back and forth because the woman, she is setting up things to kind of the stench of death is about the swampy area that they're camping in, right? So she is setting up wards. She's doing things to kind of to ward off the evil spirits. She's going to light some candles, and the husband's kind of scoffing at her. He's like, "This is stupid. The gods aren't real. The demons aren't real. It's all just bullshit." And she's they're real whether they believe in them, whether you believe in them or not. Well, just to prove her right, in a moment, the death shows up. Death shows up knocking on their door. You get an individual riding the pale horse that is a skull. He's clad in shadow, and when it reveals who he is, his head is cleft in twain. Like the dude, like you can tell that he's been
in twain.
Yeah, he has just been split from stem to stern. And he says, and what you can only imagine, if you hear in your brain, just a very scary demonic voice. Where is the death dealer?
And then you can imagine who probably cleft his face in twain.
You can kind of figure this man has taken umbrage to what's happened to him, and he seeks revenge. But when he says this, when he asks where is the death dealer, the man, the husband, boyfriend, whatever he is, the guy who was sitting there arguing and saying that gods aren't real, just disintegrates. Like he melts before his woman's very eyes. What must be a very harrowing and frightening experience. We don't know what happened to her. It doesn't tell us. But from there, the book transitions. It segues, and it gives us our main character. Death Dealer is trudging through the forest. He doesn't have his horse. He's just on foot. But he's got that just iconic shield that you see from that original painting with the phoenix on the back of it. And he's kind of hunting, and he's hearing a voice as he's walking, and it's basically talking shit to him. But it's, just kind of moving through his day, and he's hunting, and he takes his axe and he just flings it through the woods, and just decapitates and knocks a deer on its ass. Like the man just wins. But about this time, his hunt, his successful hunt, is interrupted. The howling of wolves, and they've got something cornered. They've got something at bay, and lo and behold, it is a woman, and she bears in her arms a child. Who is this person? What are they doing? But Death Dealer is not about to stand idly by while this pack of wolves just dispatches this woman and her child. He's not having it. So whatever this voice is just telling him not to do it, but he tells the voice to shut the hell up, and that he's going to jump in there and save the day. Well, there's a lot of wolves there. He might be outnumbered. But, just so happens that the fates would not allow this to be just a regular woman. She's a sorceress. And while he's like, I got you, she's like, oh, sweet, tag team. I'm going to cast a spell that'll help hold him off while we get back while we get back in action. But much like Conan, much like these stories, Death Dealer hates magic, so he's kind of like begrudgingly accepting this assistance. And luckily, she's quite the powerhouse, and she casts a spell and it knocks these wolves away. Also, you should note that they steal Homeboy's deer. These wolves have taken it. So here they are in the cold, in the snow. She's scantily clad. He's not wearing a whole lot of like warm stuff either. They've got no food, and it's getting late, so they need to go find shelter. So they're talking, and he's like, do you have anywhere to go tonight? And she's just like, no. So we've got to pair up. We've got to go find a cave. We've got to go find some place to go. Turns out our sorceress, her name is Amara, and the child she's carrying, its name is Mesh. Now, we don't know much about these people. We don't know where they're at. Death Dealer has his ways about him, though, and he knows where there's a cave nearby that they're going to camp in. And it's a treacherous cave. Like, every D&D player will be delighted to see the traps and stuff that have been set, and the way that Death Dealer goes about just rolling D20s just left and right to find them. And this is his little palace. Like, he knows where every nook and cranny is, and he's got it set up to, for a dude who lives in a cave, he's living kind of pampered life. Like, it is lush. There's nice little cushions about. He's got his treasures laid around. And they're going to camp out for the night and be protected. But everything's, as you might imagine, not what it seems. The baby starts crying. Death Dealer's got some wounds that need to be tended to. So they settle down. And look, there's no way. And to be fair, it's nobody's fault. These things just happen. There's no way for her to bandage his wounds without getting buck naked and doing some fucking. Like, that's part of how, that's part of the healing process in every good fantasy story. So Death Dealer, he takes off his armor, everything except his helmet. You can't take your helmet off. And that's an important lesson, kids. If you're going to do some extracurricular fucking in a cave, wear your helmet. That's a metaphor.
Keep a helmet on your head.
This a lot of sharp rocks out there.
Educational opportunity. Some of those rocks you can't just scrape off. You gotta protect yourself. Protect your head. It's an important thing. And look, hey, as far as sex scene goes, this one's hot. Like, even for whatever entices you heterosexuals out there, it's a pretty great sex scene. And they do what they do. It's fun times. But this would not be a story if there weren't a twist. And we get that twist in the form of diving deeper into the cave. Again, sex metaphors just all over the place in this book. Death Dealer has worked up a appetite, right? Like, and they've got to feed the baby. They've got to feed themselves. So he and the voice in his head trudge into the cave, and there is a little pond deep in the cave filled with a megalodon. I don't know what else you call this thing. It's a giant crocodilian.
Yeah, megalodon's a shark.
Oh, that is a shark. What is I forget the name of it. There was a ancient creature that was essentially like an 80-foot long alligator.
That's what it is.
And that is what this thing is.
It's an ancient 80-foot long crocodile that's not long for the world.
Yeah. No, because our man just dives in axe first, rips the skeleton, rips the spine out of this thing after a hard-fought battle, and takes the tail back for a nice little barbecue. So when he gets back, though, here's the problem. Our girl's gone. Our baby is gone. They've left I don't know if you can call it a note. They've left a piece of parchment, a cloth, something with a symbol on it. And they've ran for the hills. But death is following them. The being, with the split lip is coming, and he's bringing he's bringing hell with him, And so we obviously know that there are some ties between these two characters, and she is running from them. It's one of those things where two divergent paths are meeting. They're looking for. It seems like she is running from them. They are chasing the Death Dealer. We've got a triangle here, and the triangle makes for a really strong plot. You talk to anybody who's had any training in writing, they've set up a lot of tension here with that. And the next issue is going to take us even further into the tale. We're going to find out what's happening, who these people are, and what is motivating them, and where this child and where this sorceress came from, because we don't rightfully know. So that's my regurgitation of the plot here. I want to know what you guys thought about it, more in depth than maybe our 30,000 foot view earlier. Dive into some of the stronger points.
So one of the things I thought was really cool and I'm interested in Matt's thought on this, but I love that the helmet is cursed. And that's really why he doesn't take it off, is he can't. But then when he's fighting the crocodile, he's getting his ass kicked. And the helmet makes him say, I am the death dealer. Mm-hmm. And when he says that, he gets his berserker rage, and where he's able to do the things he can do, like rip the tail out of the crocodile. And then where we get the little nugget there that, well, you just lost another little bit of your soul to me. Yeah. I love that kind of aspect, that where you have a cursed item that gives you this power, but it slowly is killing you.
It's taking arguably more than it's giving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, kind of the whole, anytime you have a cursed item, that's the deal, is you're getting some benefits, but you are giving way more than you're
comes getting. At a cost.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I didn't see it as a berserker rage. It just seemed like, he gets a
strength boost.
It's a strength boost,
that probably comes from my D&D years, where you get, when you turn on your rage, you get increased strength.
Yeah. I just see, he gets a supernatural is the word I was looking for. He gets a supernatural boost is what is what I saw that. I didn't pick up berserker from that. I didn't, the things that I really liked the story. I really liked the art. I thought the art delivered.
Yeah, I do too. I was
100%. I thought the art was great in this book. I really wish we didn't know the guy's name. I really, one of the things about Death Dealer I really like is it's just such a mysterious character. Yeah. So knowing the guy's name, I was like, okay, that's fine. But the cursed helmet thing, that's been done before. It's not a bad device at all. So, I'm interested to see where it goes. That's basically, how, that's the gist of how I feel about it.
Nice. Well, and there's some so I like the quote-unquote cursed items trope. We've gotten, besides this, we've gotten some other really good examples of it recently. The book from Vault Comic that Matt, you just fell in love with. Barbaric, yeah. And he has the cursed axe.
The axe isn't cursed. It's just sentient.
So I thought it was given sentience by a curse, and I may be wrong on that.
Well, okay,
it's not draining him.
Yeah, but it's not
typical cursed item.
Yeah,
but it's addicted to blood, but I mean he's a cursed person too. So this axe plays into conjunction with that curse. Like he's driven by a curse to do moral good. Even though it's
the curse is that he has to do good if he wants to.
Yeah.
Or not.
And he just has an alcoholic axe along for the ride. But I like the enchanted item thing and the conversations that these things have. It's a really cool narrative device, especially when you've only got one person on the page. And, you can, sometimes you get those narrative devices where the person's talking to themselves in the head, and it's the way of the writer, especially in comics, where you don't want to cover up too much of the page with words. But how do you lay out some of the backstory? How do you lay out some of the texture of what's happening? Well, in this case, you just do it by having a cursed item. You have it by an enchanted item that talks back to them. It is a great plot device. Like that's just a cool mechanic, and it's done so simply. It's not complicated. You don't have to explain everything. You just kind of know what's happening, and that's the relationship between that the comics can present between the images that are put on the page and the words that are juxtaposed with them. I think. It's fun, and it gives you a way to you have two distinct personalities here as well. I thought it was a great little romp.
Yeah,
I am.
So one cool thing is this book had 10 different covers or whatever, and it gives you some of them in the back matter of this. One thing I have been doing as of recent is what I've been commissioning from people is Lady Death Dealer.
Yeah.
So
bare-breasted Lady Death Dealer.
Sometimes
9 times out of 10, it's like a bare-breasted Lady
mad
Death Dealer. It's hilarious.
Because I don't ever give anybody direction. I just say, hey, I want Lady Death Dealer. However you imagine that is fine by me. And most of them bitch because they think they have to draw a horse. My horse doesn't have to be. Artists hate drawing horses.
It's hard.
So, So yeah, I may be reaching out to some of these cover artists to see, if I can get one that's not $5,000.
I'm about to say, man.
I don't want. I mean, I'm not going to get these covers,
Yeah.
but to do commissions for me. So I imagine Bianchi's pretty expensive.
Oh,
Probably well out of my price range.
Yeah,
But
I need to. I'm going to that con in June. I need to set up a few commissions. I'm kind of scared though. I'm currently waiting on 2 things that I've commissioned, and I commissioned them well over a year ago.
Yeah.
And one of the artists is just holding it because we're going to see. And I said, hey, you can mail this to me if you want to. And he's like, we'll run into each other. But the other one, and so it's not a big deal. But the other one, their rep is not returning my emails, and I'm about to get pissed off. Because first I said, hey, it's no big deal. I'm not in any rush. I need this. Like, you just take your time. But I would like him to say, hey, reached out. You're still on the list. Like, there's no, I'm not happy with that. So I'm scared to book any more commissions because I've got about $400 worth of art out there that I don't have possession of.
There's a couple guys that I've dealt with over the years that I love their art, and ultimately I get it from them, but they're notoriously slow.
And I understand that from the artist, but if your job is repping the artist, then communicate with the people.
Now, I've never dealt with anybody that's had a rep to go through before. I've always dealt directly with the artist.
I've dealt with several reps, and usually it's good. This one's not a great experience, so I'm not really sure what to do. It's one of those things I need to go powwow with Jason Wood, who is the maestro of these
art
things.
Man.
Yeah. So, well, all right. I highly recommend this. So, fun fact, I was able to read this thanks to the benevolence of Mr. Matt Trogdon, who let me read it this morning because I missed this or didn't get signed up for it for some reason, and we didn't get enough copies at the local comic shop. And also, this is MIA on the internet, both legal and illegal ways. Comixology doesn't have it, and when I tell you how much I fucking hate Comixology, just added to that. It is a piece of shit website now. But I couldn't find it. So thank you, Matt, for extending your copy to me so I could talk about this on the show this morning. But I highly recommend it. Right the wrong that I committed and get this on the pull lists.
That's one of the dangers of using a unknown publisher.
Yeah.
For our book of the week is because sometimes it's hard to get a copy of it when it's I mean, we've not had the problem where you can't get a copy online before, but
but this was in previews, right? Like, this isn't obscure. Like, this
no,
was
it's not obscure. But
I don't know why
but most comic book stores are only ordering maybe a couple for their shelves versus whoever's on the pull list for it.
They don't want to sit on copies of this.
No. So, if you can find it, definitely pick it up. Hopefully it'll be on Comixology or whatever. If you have to wait till it comes out in a collected form, I can't wait to see what bonus material we might get in the omnibus or a collected trade of it.
How about you, Matt? You in for the long haul?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, this is supposed to be number one in what they're basically calling a Frazzettiverse that this publisher is going to do. So what other properties, the next property they are going to adapt is going to be interesting as well.
Have they ever made an African Queen story? I mean, that painting I think holds a record for that. That'd be cool.
Egyptian Queen.
Egyptian Queen. Egyptian Queen.
I mean, Egypt is in Africa, so we won't hold that.
Oh, jeez.
It's a state, it's a country on the continent. But I couldn't. African Queen, Egyptian Queen.
We killed Matt. He's
my God.
R.I.P. Matt. Well, all right. So
Craig put his finger up in the air for people who couldn't see it. It's like, actually,
the man was not wrong though. He was not wrong at all.
Not do that.
Well, Craig, tell me about a book that you read.
No, I'm perturbed now.
Are you you're abstaining?
No,
well, you don't get to. You unsegued my segue this morning. So.
And then I tried to help you out right now and got barbecued by Matt for it. So, anyone who listened to this show last year, last 100 episodes or so, knows that I talked about a little book last year by Aftershock called Bunny Mask.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Tobin and Andrea Muti, who, should be a selling point for anyone when it comes to art.
Yeah, dude, Moody's, that dude's amazing.
And Taylor Esposito did the lettering on this. But this is Bunny Mask, The Hollow Inside. issue number 1. I didn't know if it was going to be a whole new story, but it actually is volume 2. It's got the same characters in it as the first one. You got the sheriff and the psychiatrist that became friends as they sorted out the issues with the snitch in the last one. And they're meeting up and they're talking and in the form of a counseling type thing, but it slowly drifts to their personal lives, and the sheriff wants to know if he's seeing B, and he's like, no, there's problems there, and goes, turns out he's still sleeping with Bunny Mask, who the sheriff didn't know, but she is still doing her thing where she comes out and she is there to get rid of illness. And she ends up in the hospital at one point with a lady who is dying of cancer, and this hit home quite a bit, based on what I've just been through. And the lady says, are you here to cure my cancer? And she says, I'm not here for the cancer. I'm here for your piece of shit son that only cares about his inheritance, and for the doctor that's over there forcing nurses to have sex with them to keep their jobs. She said, but I lied. I am here for the cancer, as she removes a little bit of cancer from the lady's head and gives it to both her son and the doctor for being pieces of shit.
It's a hell of a dispensary.
This, her whole thing is that she helps people that are put in helpless positions. She looks horrific doing it. She looks like something out of a horror film. And that's because if you're a bad person, she is horrific. But interested to see where the story continues to go. I loved the first volume. The second volume, as I said, this issue is pretty much just what's going on. Let's get back in their heads. It's been a period of time since the last thing, since the last story ended. Seems like a couple years. The sheriff and the psychiatrist get together and have their weekly counseling meeting, and then their weekly counseling meeting at the bar where they get drunk and talk personally. So if you read the first one, I highly recommend it. If you didn't read the first one, this is a good jumping on point because it gives you enough information on the backstory to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
I remember having you gushed about this story, like the original story about this.
It was one of my favorite horror books of last year. So
I forget, did we all read that?
No.
At least that first issue.
We read the
right?
first issue. No, maybe not.
No, we didn't.
I think I talked about it enough that it's probably in your brain.
Well, I remember reading the first story, and for some reason it just didn't click with me. But like you hearing it talk about it now, I can't.
The first story was it started with a kid that was being held hostage by her psychotic father, but he had been killing other people along the way because the snitch, the voices were telling him to do it. Well, Bunny Mask cures him of his voices in his head. Ultimately. And there's, more than one way to do that.
It's a public service, really.
But B, his daughter, actually had died in the cave, but she's still alive.
Yeah.
Which has still not been explained. Her and the psychiatrist have a thing going on, but now because he's still hung up with Bunny Mask, he's kind of not dealing with his issues with B. So, which is, the sheriff doesn't know he's good. And there's a little bit of that, like, love triangle story going on, but when it's supernatural, it's a little hard to...
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. Yeah. It's not a typical CW love story.
Right. It could be.
It could be, but it is not. It is not. So at the end of it, he walks into his apartment, and he's on the phone with the sheriff. His B's friend is sitting there wanting to talk to him. He's like, okay, I'm going to go into the room. And he just walks through, hangs up with the sheriff, goes into his room, and it opens up into the cave where it all started. And he goes and climbs in bed with Bunny Mask and goes to sleep. So,
all right,
yeah.
So I need to catch up on that whole series.
I'm sure Aftershock's really good about putting out collected, I'm sure it's out there in a collected form. Well,
in their trade paperbacks, they kind of took the Image model on that. Like their first issues are cheap,
are they?
Because they want to get you hooked in. So,
It's a smart model.
Yeah, it is, and it's a smart company. Did I tell you? I gave Animosity to the nieces are old enough to read that now, so I bought the entire like collection, the hardcover, and gave it to
Why
my
would
nieces.
you do that to your poor nieces?
Look, they got to learn sometime.
That's like saying, "Hey, read we 3."
No, I did not do that. I did not. I will not be the person responsible. They survived. I kill giants, so that then they love that story. So I felt like they're old enough and capable to understand the point. So
all right,
put
if
it in
you say so.
If not, just run a little bit of their childhood, not the whole thing. Matt,
Certainly
what about?
not they're in charge of their keeping.
That's benefit of being the uncle. I ain't got to live with it. Send them home. What'd you? I can see what you read this week, and you are you still have those sugar stretched eyebrows from yesterday. So drop it on us, buddy.
So something else you need to catch up on.
Uh-huh.
Going all the way back to 1992, the glorious year, glorious time of the early 90s.
Wait. So it's question. How old were you in 92?
I was 14 years old.
14, correct?
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah, I was 3 years graduated from high school. I was 20.
I was 5.
Turned 21 that year.
I was a brilliant 5-year-old.
Yeah, well, I certainly was not a brilliant 14-year-old. But what I was around for was the release of Rob Liefeld's Youngblood #1, so-called The Next Generation of Heroes, subtitled First Exciting Issue! !
Dun, dun, dun.
And, for the uninitiated, Youngblood is a team book. This was published by Malibu Comics with the Image subtitle, I guess is what you would call it at the time. Rob Liefeld was the first of what's now referred to as the Image founding fathers to release a book on his own. And based on the success of his book is the only reason Image happened.
Yeah.
If he hadn't done this and it hadn't been successful, Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, Jim Valentino, Sylvester, none of those guys would have gone off and done this
Don't
thing.
forget about Wills.
Yeah, I mean, you can go on. Well, Wills didn't do anything for a while.
You can't forget about Wills.
Yeah, I mean, Wills was supposed to have been part of that launch, but things kind of fell apart for him.
Yeah,
However, so Rob Liefeld is responsible for most of the books we love the most today because he was the launching pad for Image Comics. So, show some respect. Now, the Youngblood comic itself, this is for 14-year-old boys,
yes.
No doubt about it. Rob Liefeld was 25 when he wrote this. Youngblood is, as far as I can tell, 11 team members, at least from the start. And in this issue, you have Youngblood, quote, home team. They are on American soil and handle American, soil threats.
Problems.
Terrorists, I guess you could say. And then you have the Youngblood away team. So they handle the foreign threats. And the setup in this issue, it opens up where the leader of Youngblood home team, Shaft, is at a shopping mall with his girlfriend. And a lot of exclamation points in the dialogue in this book.
As you might expect.
But they are in Washington, D.C., and the first words is, "It's too good to be true." Of course, there's an exclamation point. What's too good to be true? I'm actually shopping on my lunch hour with my boyfriend. Unbelievable, says said girlfriend. Shaft says, "Believe it, Shelley. I told the guys back at the office that paperwork would have to wait. You wouldn't believe the reports we have to fill out." As the leader of Youngblood, apparently.
That damn paperwork.
"Oh, how quickly my Jeff forgets," she says. And then she goes on to say she also has to do a lot of paperwork as being apparently somebody in the Youngblood interior team.
Uh-huh.
Of course, then they're beset upon in the mall, but it's a ruse. There's a guy who's like running through the mall, all criminal looking, and of course Shaft has to launch himself into action. He's never really has any time off, as heroes do.
You're on 24/7, bro.
And so much like said in the real world, there's a man with a gun at the mall, and he is zeroed in on Shaft. That's it, Shaft. Beat the tar out of the innocent, harmless boy. Don't pay any attention to the real threat above you. Got you pinned now. Of course, she alerts him to that, and he uses a pin, bullseye style, Marvel's bullseye, to dispatch said guy who's like up on a balcony quite a far way away. And
like a hero.
Then he's obviously set upon by the local media, who are also at the mall.
There's going to be a whole lot of paperwork for this fiasco,
Yeah.
I can tell.
And then he hightails it back to HQ because he's given the notice. And on the way back is when we are introduced to all the other Youngblood home team members like Bedrock, whose name is later changed to Bad Rock for reasons.
Probably got sued by the Flintstones.
There's also Die Hard. There's
How
Chapel.
did they not get sued?
Right.
There's also Chapel, who is just post-coitus, just thinking to
Because
himself
of
of the benefits of being a Youngblood member. Apparently,
Coital benefits.
it's easy to rein in some tail.
Yeah.
But then he, Shaft gets back to HQ with all the other team members assembled, and he's kind of cranky because his shopping was interrupted. Somebody says.
I respect that.
So he starts scolding the others for being late and whatnot. But then they are set. Their first mission in the storyline is they've got to go handle the Four. That's the name of the villain team. The Four. The Four is made up of Strong Arm, Gage, Deadlock, and Starbright. Threatening. And then, as they, there's a very interesting choice of illustration whenever Die Hard, who claims he gets first rights to beat the shit out of Strong Arm. That is an interesting pose. It's like a double arm punch swan dive. Looks like maybe the man's back is broken, or he doesn't.
He hit him with. That's like a double uppercut.
Look at the legs.
It just snapped him in half.
See the legs? I
do.
mean, he's folded himself in back. I don't know. I've never double arm punched anybody. Maybe that's what you do.
Yeah, I haven't either.
A lot of
They did not teach me that in Taekwondo, how to fold my legs back like that.
Didn't have the right teacher.
A lot of John Buscema poses in this book. There's the punches and the reception of punches are very, very John Buscema. And then we get, a 2-page spread of the whole team.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, nice.
And then the book does something, and I'd forgotten this because I hadn't read this in, unfortunately, I have to admit, decades because it's been around that long.
Uh-huh.
But then, that's the story immediately ends there. Because they just set upon the Four. And then everything goes upside down. That's because you flip the book over and there's a different Youngblood first explosive issue story. This is the Youngblood away team. And we have Brahma, Riptide, Photon, Sci-Fire, Sentinel, and Cougar. His friends call him Coog.
I mean, as you would.
There's less syllables. It's easier to say.
Coog.
Fire.
Yeah. So, I don't really need to go into what happened with those people.
I think we're good. I think we understand the premise.
But this is an interesting little piece in comics history.
It absolutely is.
Again, because it literally is responsible for us having Image Comics today. Yep. It's just fun to go back and look at this as a timepiece, knowing what it did for the industry. It's also interesting to look at what Rob Liefeld's layouts did for the industry and how basically so many people just started patterning themselves after the way he puts a page together.
That extreme style.
This extreme style, big panels, lots of action, dramatic poses. Yeah. All that kind of stuff.
Lots of pouches.
Yes, also lots of pouches, pouches upon pouches upon pouches.
Well, I mean, so
even Spawn had pouches in number one. Spawn, the Hell Spawn, needed pouches to put his Cheetos in. I guess I don't know.
Flaming hot
you can
Cheetos.
say and think what you want about Rob Liefeld, and we all do. Like that we all do.
And none of it's a hot take.
But objectively speaking, he was for better or worse, he dynamically changed the look and feel of comics. In a way that, like, you think about how much comics changed from like 1985 to like 1995. They went through a whole rebirth.
Yeah.
And like I said, for better or worse, and his reputation notwithstanding, Rob Liefeld played a heavy-handed role in that.
Yeah.
And you look at the mechanics of this book right here. So, I try to think of things. I mean, you guys know me. I try to think of things. There's a reason I love books like Marvel Comics Presents, right? Like, you get four stories for the price of one. In this book, you don't get a lot, but you get 2 different comics. And for a kid who's buying this with his lunch money, for those 14-year-old boys who have scrounged up enough money to go to the mall and get a comic, you're getting 2 books for the price of one. They may not be, full of enriching story, but they look cool. They are titillating for the young mind, and you're getting 2 different aspects of it that are introducing you to a whole set of things. Like, that is a very, very genius marketing strategy. And it's not new. He didn't invent it, but he certainly, sharpened that edge.
There's a shot in the this was a huge shot in the arm to the comics industry.
Exactly.
Some people suffered from it immediately. A lot of traditional artists, but frankly, it brought in a lot of new readers. Lot of new readers. And a lot of people have wondered why a Youngblood adaptation, whether it be TV or movies, was never made. It's been tried several times. Yeah. Problem is his ownership. Rob Liefeld is not the sole owner of the Youngblood title, the Youngblood property. And since he is not, he has said there will never be a Youngblood movie or TV show because of that.
If I'm not mistaken, was it Youngblood or one of his other properties that, like, relatively recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, somebody has the rights to, and he is super salty because they tried to launch a new #1 with something that he made from this early era. I think it was Youngblood. I don't think it was Prophet. I think it was Youngblood. And he is super salty about the owners. And again, I don't know enough about it to say, rightfully or wrongly, because he doesn't own it, but he does not like them at all. And he's tried to get the rights back, and they won't give it
I know that applies to Youngblood.
Yeah, I think it may be Youngblood that they did that with.
Well, and it was relaunched a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but
he was very vocal on Twitter about his disdain for
Was it because it was published through Malibu that he didn't get the rights?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not it. I don't know the background on why he doesn't have sole ownership of this property, but I just know that he doesn't, because he's talked about that. He's like, it'll never happen. It'll never be an adaptation because of that.
Well, and to be fair, it may be one of those things that there's a lot of these comics from the early 90s that I don't think need to be transitioned to a different form of media because they are so of a time. Like, I think of them as, there's this story is not exactly, rife with depth. It may just need to be of its.
Neither was Terminator 2, and I love that.
Hey, look, you're right. Maybe to me, it's just that this style, the visual style is so singular to what this is in the comic. I don't know if.
Well, I mean, obviously that visual style would be toned down.
It'd be hard to translate. But
not a whole lot of Arnie Schwarzenegger's running around looking like that.
The flip side is they made Spawn, so maybe so I don't know. But like you said, it's never going to happen.
Have you seen
of the
Spawn?
ownership. I will maintain and argue for at the time it is bad. It is bad in the light of history, but at the time when it came out, I was just in that age range where Spawn was super cool, the film, and so it may not the adult me would not appreciate it for what it was, but Caleb as a little young kid, you see what the Violator does. It was all dark and weird and sexy, and it was in that early days of really digital manipulation. At the time, it was great for me. It doesn't hold up to the light of history, but at the time, it was pretty fucking weird and cool.
I was late teens when that movie came out, maybe even in my early 20s, and I just remember cringing at the dialogue.
Yeah. Well, and if I had been older, I probably would too. But I think there's probably some older. It doesn't matter what you look at. You look at older readers. If it's written and made for people of a certain age, I think there's cringy moments in it. But there are things that are considered bad movies now that I saw as a child, and I'm like, that's an important part of my childhood, right? Like, and I can appreciate
I
it from that
definitely
aspect.
have movies like that that I enjoyed as a child that don't hold up.
Yeah, they don't live up in a lot of history. So, but it's just weird. Like the '90s were a weird time.
Hell yeah, it was a glorious weird time.
Lots of cocaine being done in the '90s.
Thrash was at its peak.
Yeah,
Comics were blowed up. I mean, it was
But I just want to reiterate, because if this is somebody's first episode listening to this, they might hear the way that you're talking about this, and they might think that you're taking a mocking tone. You revere these books. You really do.
I mean,
you are sensible enough, and you are to understand what it is now. But you have a deep reference for these comics and where they like the seeds that they planted in you as a comic reader.
Yeah, I go back and read these. I mean, if I find them, I'm generally buying them. I mean, I just bought this earlier this week. Yeah. Out of a dollar bin, and I bought this. I bought Cyberforce #1. I bought Savage Dragon #1. Yeah, I bought all those to go back and read them. They're very, very interesting time capsules to me. Is what it is.
They really are. It's the same reason I buy the facsimile editions of books when they come out, because I want to see it as it was published in that time.
Yeah.
The ads, just the entire ephemera. But I just want to make that point. Like we take a joking tone about it, but we all really, really, really do appreciate it for what it is, and we all,
Well, I think Matt nailed it. He said that for what it meant to the comic industry regarding Image Comics and whatever, and for creator-owned comics in the future, you got to give it its credit for what it was. Whether it's your style of book now or not, it's probably irrelevant to what it did for the industry.
Doesn't need to be. Yeah. Doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Same with the Spawn movie. Doesn't need to be for everybody.
It wasn't.
It had a good soundtrack, though. Had a really good soundtrack. All right, man. So a few weeks ago, I was absent from the show. One of those rare occasions where I just couldn't be here. Adding the extra layer of weirdness to it, that was the week that I picked out the round table, and didn't get to talk about it. But you guys did, and I think you handled it very, very well. I went back and listened to it, and I appreciated the conversations that you had about it. And that book is none other than The Rocketeer, which is coming out from IDW. Right now it's being written by Stephen Mooney with Lynn O'Grady doing the colors. A story and art by Stephen Mooney, Lynn O'Grady on the colors, letters and design by Sean Lee, and some editorial by Nicholas Nino and Scott Dunbar. Again, I just want to say, like, from a listener standpoint, like, I really enjoyed you guys talk about the first issue. And I realized, like, this is not particularly y'all's, like, quote-unquote cup of tea, but you really, you handled it really, really well. And just we
didn't shit all over it.
Yeah, no, you didn't. You took something.
He said it like it was a beating. You handled that really well.
No, I mean, but you guys read something, and I say you did it because I picked it out. But you guys read something that is not really within your quote unquote wheelhouse, and you talked about the history of it, the understanding, like the kind of surprise that this is just now turning 40, and you take this kind of character that is.
That was all Matt. He did that research. Craig doesn't do that sort of research.
Craig just knows. But you took this thing that is really it is a kind of a modern story, but it's rooted in nostalgia. Nostalgia for this early American, turn of the century, 1900s, 1920s
golden age
world.
Comics.
And I really enjoyed listening to it as y'all spoke about it. So this book is called The Rocketeer: The Great Race. I brought issue 2 because I wanted to get in on the action. I'm sitting there listening to you guys wax poetic about it, and I was just like commenting to myself on things that I would have said. And I wanted to bring it back. So the second issue of this story opens up where the race is really fixing to kick off. And, again, adding to the historical feel for this, it takes place at the Chaplin Airdrome in LA. Charlie Chaplin, key figure in this time period. And they named it. And the book is, as you might expect, The Great Race. And Cliff he's there. He's got this new high-tech, it's a prop plane, but if you look at the design of it, it's very much an early aerodynamic shape of what you're going to see in modern jets. And this thing is just a beast. It's ridiculous. They don't know how it works. It's got a very balanced and intricate fuel design that it needs to fly. And no one's ever seen anything like this before, and he's still trying to figure it out. I mean, this dude is literally fixing to fly this plane around the world, and he's still trying to figure out the throttle and thrust and this, that, and the other. and because he's a test pilot, right? Like that's what gives.
50 years old. I'm still trying to figure out the throttle and thrust.
Yeah, you and me both, bro. It's keep practicing. That's all you can do. But it's a different type of machine for him that he is trying to figure out, and this is what makes Cliff really cool. Like he really is fearless. And these pilots, when they were just in this era, when they were just figuring out aerodynamics of airplanes, they really were fearless people. Like it wasn't what you consider today, where you get on a plane and you land. Like there was an increased and significant chance that if you got in the cockpit of one of these things, you weren't coming down safely. I mean, you're going to come down. It's not falling that hurts, but it's that sudden stop. But they were terrified of it, and as were their families and around. And in this particular story, as you guys noted, Cliff's girlfriend is Betty Page, like the Betty Page, just statuesque bombshell. And she is concerned. She is worried about what's happened. She's totally in love with Cliff, but she's also trying to maintain that film attitude about herself. And so in this book, it opens up and they're chilling in the Bulldog Cafe, and all of these pilots start walking in who are part of this. And you see Debbie Seville come in, and she is just a female ace pilot. Nobody really understands how she does what she does, and this is an era where women aren't given their due and proper. And she's a trendsetter, man. She has shattered that glass ceiling. Also, an individual.
So basically, 2022. Women aren't given their due and proper.
Right. You can reckon, and she's dressed up like Rosie the Riveter too. And I like the art in this book. Really appreciate that. It almost has like a Terry Moore feel, but not quite. But it's in that school. Just really, really cool. So they're sitting there talking, and a figure who is going to inevitably reveal himself to be a villain walks in, and he's of course a German. He is a German pilot and just a dick. Like starts hitting on Betty, just laying it on thick right in front of Cliff, and he gets pissed, and they almost they're going to start fighting. But Betty just doesn't get what's happening, and she just plays into it. But Betty's jealous that Cliff is mesmerized by Seville, not in a romantic way. He just is amazed by her prowess as a pilot, and so both of them are just doing that whole jealous boyfriend girlfriend thing. But all good spousal confrontations must come to an end, and they do, and they get ready to go back to this race. But something happens here, and Cliff has he recognizes the German's voice, but he doesn't know from where. But the story gives us a little insight to that. Once upon a time, on some mission as the Rocketeer, Cliff, runs out of gas, and he falls, sadly to the earth. He does this whole flying squirrel thing with his jacket, slow him down so he doesn't die. Which, by the way, that doesn't really work with a leather jacket in real life, but comics. But as he crash lands, it's kind of behind enemy lines.
We're talking about the Rocketeer here.
Yeah.
The guy puts on a helmet and a jetpack.
Look, but
we're going to point out what doesn't work in real life.
Yeah,
I want kids at home to
comics
know that they
work better when they're absurd.
I just want the kids to know that you can't rely on your leather jacket to fly. You have to have a jetpack, and it has to have fuel. In this flashback, though, he is falling behind enemy lines, and the Germans, the Nazis, are trying to figure out where this thing just landed that they saw. And the reason he remembers his voice is because Homeboy, this German pilot, is in fact a Nazi officer and a Nazi pilot, and is now kind of a renowned air racer with a bad attitude and a bad reputation. I mean, this dude just wrecks people
bad dude
purposefully.
with a bad dude.
Yeah. You just can't reform Nazis. It's unfortunate.
I almost made a comment about it being, the good old days when it was clear that Nazis were the bad guys.
Yeah, right. But can't reform them. But the race starts, right? This is what we've all been waiting for in this book. The planes take off, and they're supposed to be staggered, but the German douchebag rips in between two planes, knocks one dude off his kilter, and the plane explodes. And they just blast off. It's off to a bad start, right? This dude is just a douchebag. He didn't have to do that. He's not trying to win fair. He's just trying to win, which really pisses everybody off, but especially Cliff. As Cliff is flying this new plane, he's worried about it. He's got a lot of money and a reputation riding on it.
And if I remember, he's got a gas tank right underneath his seat.
Yes, the dude is sitting on a bomb. And so he's got a strategy, though, and they lay it out pretty well in the book. Due to the special nature of the fuel that this new highfalutin aircraft rides on, he's going to just kind of nurse it, and he's going to stay in second place throughout the entire race, and they're going to do that whole last leg thing. But Rocketeer doesn't like second place. Cliff is not the kind of dude who just holds it back, and he's going to push it a little bit to catch up because he wants this German to know that he's on his tail. He has a need for it, right? He needs this guy to know. And that's where this issue ends. And in fact, something does happen in this, and our hothead, Cliff, has pushed the plane a little bit too hard, trying to get a little bit closer, and finds himself sputtering a little bit. And that's where we get this beautiful image of the next cover, which is the Rocketeer's helmet with the reflection of the Eiffel Tower in the background. You get this German pistol and a damsel in distress in the eye holes. I love this book, man. I love the movie The Rocketeer. I love what Dave Stevens did with this character, just the invention of everything. It is a beautiful bit of it's nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia, through the lens of nostalgia, an adventure story. It's some pieces. It's a period story of a certain time in a certain era. It's spectacular. It's stupid fun. Again, suspend your disbelief. It's the Rocketeer, right? But it's a fun story. It takes everything, it takes that tone of not G.I. Joe. It takes that tone of Indiana Jones, and distills it into an aerodynamic story, to a story about these brilliant and fearless men and what they were capable of in a time where Nazis, or the OG Nazis were still bad guys, and they were still maniacal, and all these things were happening around the world. An extra thing to love about these books is you get some of the most famous creators in comics in the back matter telling you about their opinions of Dave Stevens and their opinions of what he created. You get these amazing quotes from people who have talked about it on panels from San Diego Comic-Con in 1982. You get Jackie Estrada, Bob Chapman, just these huge names. Jaime Hernandez talks about his relationship with Dave Stevens and what he appreciated about this book. Adam Hughes, there's a quote by him in the story. Mark Evanier. There's just so many names in this book that Jeff Darrow gives credence to Stewart. It's amazing to me in 40 years the footprint that the Rocketeer has, not only in these really timeless stories, but just for what it did for comics, and and being a comic book that got turned into a movie, like one of the original quote unquote comic book movies. So I'm loving this series. The visuals are great. Like I said, Stephen Mooney has this style that is very bombshell. Like I said, it reminds me a little bit of Terry Moore, but not quite Terry Moore, but very much in that school. So check it out. It's from IDW. Issue 2 was a lot of fun. I can't wait to see where they go with this. I can't wait to see him being the Rocketeer, because really he's just being a pilot. It's just Cliff in this, but you're going to get some of it. So we're going to get some of that action, and we're going to see Cliff punch a Nazi, and that always warms my cockles. Love seeing Nazis get punched, especially by dudes in badass leather jackets. So that's my book. So happy 40th anniversary, nice. Rocketeer. Loved listening to you guys talk about that first issue. Glad to hear that you enjoyed the read, even if you're not, it's not something you're going to stick on. But I just love this book. So very, very high marks. Very high marks.
Nice.
So, well, all right. That was fun. So we got a little new, a little old, some craziness just all aboard. And that is, look, if you can't find something in comics that just strikes your fancy, then there's nothing that strikes your fancy. There's so many
warms
books.
Your cockles.
Indeed.
You got to have warm cockles. Got to. Cockles should not be cold. Medical advice from a lawyer.
Medical advice from a lawyer.
But
He's not a
seriously,
doctor, but he plays one on TV.
I am a juris doctor. I am a doctor of law. Constitutional surgeon, if you will. Gonna ride that one till the very end.
Christ.
There is so much in comics, though, that you can't not find something to appreciate. Even my husband, who does not read comics, is reading a comic right now based on a TV show. He is the Heartstopper that just came out on Netflix. It's got my husband, who does not read comics, reading a comic. There's something out there for everybody. So really hope you've heard what we've had to say and found something that makes you want to go after it. Do we got anything we need to cover before we land the plane?
We covered it all.
I think we did. Some hell of some ground. I mean, we got Rob Liefeld in the mix. I think. So before we get out of here, we hope you have enjoyed this little show that we do. We try to do one once a week. We've got a pretty good track record. We hadn't missed yet. If you want more of this throughout your week, come check us out on Facebook. Join our group. You can see what we're posting on Instagram. We have a Twitter page. We're at SFG Podcast on both the Insta and Twitter. We also have an email address. You can fire off, let us know what you're up to at SFG, blah, 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 southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. You'd think after 200 some odd issues I'd be good at this, but I'm not. Shoot us an email. Let us know what you're up to, what you're liking, what you're disliking. We'd love to hear from you. As always, before we end we send you off into your week. We are going to prepare you adequately by letting you know what we're going to grab this next week, and maybe give you a pointer or a hint of what you ought to pick up at your local comic shop in this next Wednesday when new books come out. So I will toss it over to my brethren here to tell us what they're getting.
So I don't know if you remember a couple of years back, but Archie started revitalizing some of their hero comics.
Yeah. The Fox.
Yeah, so this week there is a new issue of the Fox coming out.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah, the Fox Family Values. Of course, it's Archie Comics. It's done by Dean Hespio. The summary is pretty simple. Fox Family Values follows the life of the super heroic Patton family, all considered freak magnets who can't help but do what they can to save the day, whether they like it or not.
Oh my God, I wish I was a freak magnet.
So yeah, it's the Fox was really fun when it came out. The Mask was a good one too, or whatever. I can't remember the name of it, but Black Mask, I think it was really good. But the Fox was a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to this book.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm going to try to pick that one up as well. What you grabbing this week, Matt?
From Marvel, Wolverine number 21. Deeper into danger, danger, danger. Outnumbered and surrounded, Wolverine unleashes his berserker rage, and Deadpool embraces his deadly fighting skills in a last-ditch effort to save mutant lives. I'm in.
Who's that written by?
One Benjamin Percy.
Yeah, he's just sex crack.
And the art is continuing to be done by one Adam Kubert.
Also, visual sex crack. Amazing team.
Sex crack.
I want to implore you all to go out and grab a book from the great Dark Horse Comics line of books this week. You can trust them. They put out some good stuff.
Is it Bernie the Bear?
It's not Bernie the Bear. No. This is the Shaolin Cowboy. If I got to tell you how great Jeff Darrow is, I don't know what we're doing here. But Jeff Darrow and Dave Stewart are back together again, writing the Shaolin Cowboy. This particular story is called Cruel to Be Kin. I love Jeff Darrow art. I'll pick it up for the art alone. It's gorgeous. It's stunning. But the stories are always fun, and usually they're silent stories. And so you get to see some amazing storytelling without any exposition. Then that's talent. That's hard work.
So, I know our buddy Jerry loved the first one.
Jerry's the one who turned me on to this. I wouldn't have read it if it hadn't been for him. And Jerry's kind of a bulldog. When he likes something, he will.
Everybody's got to like it.
he will.
Even if it's monkeys with blue fluid.
He's done everything, but I think borderline done. Clockwork Orange people. Like you're just gonna hold your eyebrows open until you love it. Before we go, I just want to take a point of personal privilege here. I just graduated from law school. The past 3 years have been hard. They've been taxing and trying. Doing this show every week has been the greatest form of escapism that I could have asked for. Doing this show with you two gentlemen has been an honor and a privilege. And I want to personally thank both of you because I genuinely don't know if I could have stayed sane throughout law school if it had have not been for you guys and getting together every week, either virtually or physically, for coffee and comics and just hanging out with two of my most amazing friends. Even before Matt was on the show through this whole thing, when we had Sean and Jerry on the show, it genuinely was it is and will continue to be a pleasure. But I just wanted to personally thank you because this has been a release for me. It's been so much fun, and I could not think of anybody better to meet up with week in and week out.
Well, we can breathe a sigh of relief. It sounds like he wants to continue
the
show now that he's a JD.
Yeah, right.
No, we're not close to being done. But I just want to thank you guys, seriously. And I mean that. You two are two of my best friends and saved me from a lot of grief and gave me a lot of a break when I needed one every week. So
nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, that's you're welcome, but it wasn't. I mean, it was probably more out of selfishness on our part as well.
Not me.
It's
Matt is benevolent.
it was all. Yeah, I mean, I think it works as a great escapism for all of us to get here, and
Absolutely.
get together, and even if some days it feels like doing the homework to get the books read. It's
Well, you wouldn't appreciate the good or great ones if you didn't have to
That's
suffer a
facts.
little bit.
That's
right.
facts.
That's right.
And if life has taught me nothing, it's that success is a group project, and I'm glad that I'm part of y'all's group. So, and I will end it on that note. Little sentimentality from me, as you probably expect to come from me. I'm kind of a sobby mess these days, but I love doing this show, and I love the people who listen to this show. I really do. So we hope you have had fun. We'll end it with that. Come back next week. We'll be right here talking about these funny books, talking about the culture, giving you our opinions, and just really reveling in this hobby that we have. So go forth and love some comics.
Enjoy your sex crap.